They say the best revenge is massive success. But I never imagined mine would come with 3.2 million subscribers and a CEO begging for his job back. 3 months ago, I was just another corporate drone at Meridian Digital Solutions, getting my morning coffee and pretending to care about quarterly reports. Today, I'm the internet's favorite whistleblower, and my former boss is probably hiding under his mahogany desk. My name is Brooke Harrison, and this is the story of how getting fired became the best thing that ever happened to me. I should have seen it coming. The signs were there, flashing like neon warnings in a dark alley. But when you're 28, drowning in student loans, and desperately trying to prove yourself in the corporate world, you tend to ignore the red flags until they're wrapped around your neck like a noose. It started on a Tuesday morning in March. I'd been with Meridian for 18 months, working as a senior marketing analyst under the tyrannical rule of CEO Marcus Blackwood. Picture a man who looks like he stepped out of a 1980s Wall Street movie, but with none of the charm and twice the narcissism. Blackwood was the kind of boss who'd call a meeting to discuss why we needed fewer meetings, then schedule 3 more meetings to follow up on the first one. I was good at my job. More than good, actually. I'd increased our social media engagement by 340% in my first year, landed 3 major clients through innovative digital campaigns, and had even developed a proprietary analytics system that was saving the company thousands in third-party software costs. But apparently, being competent was my first mistake. The day everything changed, I was presenting my quarterly performance report to the board. My PowerPoint was flawless, my data was irrefutable, and my projections for the next quarter were conservative but promising. I watched the board members nod approvingly as I walked them through case studies of successful campaigns I'd orchestrated. Even Janet Morrison, the notoriously difficult CFO, seemed impressed. But Blackwood sat in his leather chair like a king on his throne. His fingers steepled, his expression growing darker with each slide I presented. When I finished, the room erupted in polite applause. Janet actually said, "Exceptional work, Brooke. This is exactly the kind of forward-thinking approach we need." That's when Blackwood dropped his first bomb. "Actually," he said, his voice cutting through the murmur of approval like a blade, "I think we need to discuss Brooke's future with the company." The room fell silent. I felt my stomach drop to the floor, but I kept my professional smile plastered on my face. "I'm sorry, sir." "Well?" Blackwood continued, leaning back in his chair with the casual cruelty of a cat playing with a mouse. "While your work has been adequate, I'm concerned that you might be overqualified for this position." Overqualified? The word hit me like a slap. I'd heard it before, whispered in office corridors and used as corporate speak for, "You're making us look bad." But I'd never expected it to be weaponized against me so blatantly. "Sir, I'm not sure I understand," I said, fighting to keep my voice steady. "My performance metrics are above target across all categories." "That's exactly the problem," Blackwood replied. And I swear I saw a smirk tugging at the corner of his mouth. "You see, Brooke, when someone is overqualified, they tend to, how should I put this, outshine their colleagues. It creates an uncomfortable dynamic in the workplace." The translation was clear. I was making him look incompetent, and he couldn't stand it. Janet Morrison frowned. "Marcus, Brooke's performance has been exemplary. Her analytics system alone has saved us." "I've made my decision," Blackwood interrupted, his tone final. "Brooke, we'll be restructuring your position. We'll provide you with a generous severance package, of course." And just like that, I was fired. Not for poor performance, not for misconduct, not for budget cuts. I was fired for being too good at my job. I gathered my belongings in a cardboard box while security watched, a humiliation ritual as old as corporate America itself. My colleagues avoided eye contact, probably afraid they'd catch whatever disease had infected me. As I walked past Blackwood's office, I saw him through the glass walls, laughing on the phone, probably already spinning the story to make himself look like a decisive leader who'd eliminated a problematic employee. That night, I sat in my tiny apartment, staring at the severance papers and wondering what I'd done wrong. I'd played by all the rules, worked overtime without complaint, and delivered results that exceeded expectations. But in the corporate world, apparently, excellence was a liability if you weren't the one at the top. I was angry. Furious, actually. But more than that, I was hurt. I genuinely believed that hard work and talent would be rewarded, that merit mattered more than office politics. I was naive, and now I was unemployed. That's when I remembered the folder on my personal laptop labeled Meridian Personal Archive. Over the past 18 months, I'd been documenting everything, not because I was planning some elaborate revenge scheme, but because I'm naturally detail-oriented and I like to keep records of my work. Screenshots of emails, copies of reports, recordings of meetings where I'd been asked to present my findings. All completely legal. All obtained during my employment. All technically mine. I opened the folder and started scrolling through the files. What I found was even worse than I'd imagined. There were emails from Blackwood instructing department heads to tone down high-performing employees who were making waves. There were budget reports showing that while the company was claiming financial difficulties to justify salary freezes, executive bonuses had increased by 40%, there were screenshots of Blackwood's personal social media posts, made from his company account during work hours, including one particularly charming rant about entitled millennials who expected to be rewarded for basic competence. But the crown jewel was a recorded Zoom meeting from 2 months earlier, where Blackwood had explicitly told his senior staff that they needed to manage expectations by ensuring that individual contributors didn't become too visible to the board. In his own words, "We can't have analysts thinking they're executives. It disrupts the natural hierarchy." I stared at my laptop screen, my anger crystallizing into something sharper and more focused. Blackwood hadn't just fired me for being overqualified. He'd fired me for threatening his fragile ego and his stranglehold on power. That's when I got the idea. I'd always been active on social media, mostly sharing marketing insights and industry trends with my modest following of 2,000 connections. But I'd never considered using it as a platform for something bigger. Now, sitting in my apartment with nothing but time and a burning desire for justice, I decided to take a different approach. I created a YouTube channel called Corporate Confessions and uploaded my first video at 2 a.m. on a Thursday morning. The title was simple: How I Got Fired for Being Too Good at My Job. I didn't show my face, just my voice over a slideshow of generic office images. But I told my story with passion and precision, walking viewers through the absurdity of being fired for excellence. The video got 500 views in the first week, not exactly viral, but it was a start. For my second video, I decided to dive deeper. I titled it "The Email That Proves Your Boss Hates Success," and shared some of the less legally sensitive emails I'd found, with names and company details redacted. I explained how corporate culture actively punishes high performers to protect mediocre managers. This one got 2,000 views. By my fourth video, Why Your CEO's Bonus Increased While You Got a Salary Freeze, I was hitting 10,000 views per upload. I'd found my voice and my audience. People were hungry for someone to articulate what they'd been feeling but couldn't express, that the corporate world was rigged against competence and integrity. The comments section became a support group for disillusioned employees. People shared their own stories of being pushed out for threatening lazy bosses, of having their ideas stolen by superiors, of watching incompetent managers get promoted while talented workers were sidelined. I started getting messages from current and former employees of other companies, sharing their own evidence of corporate malfeasance. My content evolved from personal grievance to systematic exposure of how modern corporations operate like feudal systems designed to protect the incompetent and exploit the capable. 3 months after my firing, my channel had 100,000 subscribers. I was making more money from ad revenue and sponsorships than I'd ever made at Meridian. More importantly, I was making a difference. Several of my videos had been picked up by business journalists, and I'd been quoted in Forbes and Harvard Business Review articles about toxic workplace culture. But the real vindication came on a Wednesday morning in June. I was editing my latest video, How to Spot a Fake Leader, when my phone rang. The caller ID showed a number I recognized but hadn't seen in months. Meridian Digital Solutions. Brooke? The voice was tentative, almost pleading. It's Marcus. Marcus Blackwood. I nearly dropped my phone. Hello, Marcus? Listen, I know this is unconventional, but I was wondering if we could talk in person, if possible. I could hear the desperation in his voice, and I'd be lying if I said I didn't enjoy it. About what? Well, there have been some developments since you left. The board has been asking questions about our performance metrics, particularly in the marketing department. And frankly, we're struggling to replicate the success you had. Translation: they'd realized that firing their best performer was a terrible idea. And now they were scrambling to fix the damage. I'm sorry to hear that, I said. Not sorry at all. The thing is, Brooke, I'd like to offer you your position back. With a significant raise, of course, and a promotion to marketing director. I laughed. Actually laughed out loud. Marcus, are you familiar with my YouTube channel? There was a long pause. Your what? Corporate Confessions. I've been sharing my experiences in the corporate world. It's been quite popular. Over 400,000 subscribers now. Another pause. Longer this time. I haven't seen it. You should check it out, especially the series I did on Meridian. Very insightful stuff about leadership and corporate culture. I could practically hear him sweating through the phone. Brooke, I think there might be some misunderstanding about your departure. If you've said anything that might be construed as what? True? Look, can we meet? I think we can work something out. Maybe there's a way to clarify the record. I'm sorry, Marcus, but I'm not interested in returning to Meridian. I've found my calling elsewhere. What do you want? The desperation was raw now, his corporate politeness stripped away. Money, a better title, stock options. I want you to understand something, I said, my voice calm and steady. You didn't fire me because I was overqualified. You fired me because I was competent, and that made you look bad. You prioritized your ego over your company's success, and now you're dealing with the consequences. Brooke, please. I'm building something bigger now, something that actually matters. Thanks to you, I've found my purpose, exposing leaders like you who prioritize politics over performance. I hung up before he could respond. 20 minutes later, I uploaded a new video. When your former boss calls begging, a live case study? I didn't name Meridian or Blackwood specifically, but I shared the entire conversation, demonstrating how toxic leaders react when their actions have consequences. The video got 50,000 views in the first hour. But that wasn't the end of it. Over the next few weeks, I started getting messages from current Meridian employees who discovered my channel. They were sharing stories and evidence of ongoing dysfunction under Blackwood's leadership. Apparently, my firing had been just the beginning of a pattern of retaliatory behavior against competent employees. I learned that Janet Morrison, the CFO who'd praised my work, had been pushed out 2 weeks after I left. The official reason was strategic restructuring, but everyone knew it was because she'd questioned Blackwood's decision to fire me. 2 other senior analysts had quit in protest, and the entire marketing department was in chaos. Meanwhile, my channel was exploding. Major media outlets were reaching out for interviews. I'd been invited to speak at 3 business conferences about workplace toxicity and corporate accountability. A literary agent had contacted me about writing a book. The final domino fell on a Thursday in July. I was at a coffee shop, working on my laptop, when I got a call from an unknown number. Is this Brooke Harrison? The voice was professional, unfamiliar. Yes, who's this? My name is David Chen, and I'm the chairman of the board at Meridian Digital Solutions. I was wondering if we could arrange a meeting. The board chairman, this was bigger than I'd expected. I'm listening. I've been following your YouTube channel with great interest. Your insights into corporate leadership and workplace culture are illuminating. I was hoping we could discuss your experiences at Meridian in more detail. We met 2 days later at an upscale restaurant downtown. David Chen was in his 60s, with silver hair and the kind of quiet authority that comes from decades of genuine leadership. He was everything Marcus Blackwood pretended to be. "I'll be direct," he said after we'd ordered. "The board has been conducting an internal review of Meridian's leadership practices. Your content has been influential in that process." "I'm glad to hear it. We've discovered some concerning patterns in Mr. Blackwood's management style. High performer turnover, budget irregularities, and what appears to be systematic retaliation against employees who challenge his authority." I nodded. "That matches my experience. The board has voted to remove Marcus Blackwood as CEO, effective immediately. We're also implementing new policies to prevent this kind of toxic leadership in the future." I felt a surge of vindication so pure it was almost intoxicating. "What about the other employees who were pushed out?" "We're reaching out to everyone who left under questionable circumstances. Janet Morrison has already agreed to return as interim CEO while we conduct a proper search. We'd like to offer you a position as well. VP of Digital Strategy, reporting directly to the board." It was everything I'd wanted 3 months ago. A prestigious title, a significant salary increase, and the chance to implement real change at a company level. But as I sat there, looking at this powerful man offering me corporate redemption, I realized something had changed. "I appreciate the offer, Mr. Chen, but I'm not interested in returning to Meridian." He looked surprised. "May I ask why?" "Because I found something better. My YouTube channel isn't just about exposing bad leaders. It's about empowering employees to recognize their worth and demand better treatment. It's about changing corporate culture from the outside." "That's admirable. But surely you'd have more impact working within the system." I shook my head. "The system is designed to protect people like Marcus Blackwood. Real change comes from transparency and accountability, not from climbing corporate ladders." David Chen smiled. "You know, I think you might be right. Would you be interested in consulting work? We're planning to completely overhaul our management training program." "Now that," I said, "sounds interesting." 6 months later, my YouTube channel had 2.8 million subscribers. I'd launched a consulting business helping companies identify and eliminate toxic leadership practices. My book, The Overqualified Employee: How Corporate Culture Punishes Excellence, had become a bestseller. And I'd just signed a deal to host a podcast about workplace accountability. Marcus Blackwood, meanwhile, had been quietly forced out of the industry after word spread about his leadership failures. The last I heard, he was working as a regional sales manager for a mid-sized insurance company, a significant step down from his previous position. The irony wasn't lost on me. He'd fired me for being overqualified, and now he was fighting to prove he was qualified for any leadership role at all. But the real victory wasn't his downfall. It was the hundreds of messages I received from viewers who'd found the courage to speak up about toxic bosses, who'd negotiated better working conditions, or who'd left dysfunctional companies to find better opportunities. It was the corporate executives who'd reached out to improve their leadership practices after watching my content. Getting fired for being overqualified had taught me something invaluable. Sometimes the best revenge isn't getting back at your enemies. Sometimes it's proving that you never needed their approval in the first place. Today, I'm sitting in my own office, not in some corporate tower, but in a converted warehouse space that serves as my studio and consulting headquarters. I've got a team of 12 people working with me, all of whom are paid fairly and treated with respect. We're profitable, we're growing, and most importantly, we're making a difference. My phone buzzes with a notification. Another message from someone who's found my channel and wants to share their story. I smile and open my laptop. Time to get back to work. After all, there are always more stories to tell, more toxic leaders to expose, and more people to empower. Getting fired was just the beginning of my real career. And the best part? I'm definitely not overqualified for this job. I'm exactly where I belong.